Marcus used to be gentle with me. Back when we met in that tiny coffee shop on Fifth Street, he spilled his latte all over my sketchbook. We laughed so hard people turned to stare at us. He promised we'd chase our dreams together, hand in hand. He said he'd never leave me behind in the shadows while he climbed toward the light. But marriage changed his promises into rules I never agreed to follow. "You don't understand business," he'd say whenever I asked about his work at the firm. "It's not your thing, babe. Just focus on the house." At first, I believed him completely. I told myself maybe love was about staying quiet sometimes, about letting the other person shine while you stood in their gentle shadow. But silence has a strange way of swallowing you whole, until you forget what your own voice sounds like. So I started filling that silence with learning, reading business books, researching investment strategies, putting tiny amounts into projects that caught my curious eye. One of them was a small tech startup called Horizon Innovations. I didn't think much of it at the time. Just curiosity and a gut feeling. Years passed slowly. Marcus climbed corporate ladders while I watched from the floor below. Until one morning, an email blinked across my screen. "Investor update. Congratulations on your early contribution." I clicked the email with trembling fingers, my coffee growing cold beside me. The number stared back at me from the screen, almost glowing in the morning light streaming through our kitchen window. My tiny investment from 3 years ago had multiplied beyond anything I'd imagined possible. What started as $2,000 had grown into something that made my breath catch in my throat. For the first time in a very long while, I smiled. Quietly, carefully. The kind of smile that means a storm is gathering on the distant horizon. I closed my laptop before Marcus came downstairs for breakfast. He kissed my forehead absently, already scrolling through work emails on his phone. "Coffee ready?" he asked without really looking at me. "Always is," I replied softly. He grabbed his travel mug and headed toward the door, briefcase in one hand, keys jingling in the other. Just before leaving, he turned back briefly. "Don't forget to pick up my dry cleaning today. The blue suit. I need it for Thursday's presentation." "Of course," I said. The door closed behind him with its usual click. I waited until his car pulled out of the driveway before opening my laptop again. The email from Horizon Innovations waited patiently, full of opportunities one was only beginning to understand. I met Mr. Blake 2 weeks later at a quiet restaurant downtown. The meeting was held in a private room with soft lighting and expensive art hanging on dark walls. "Mrs. Hartley," he said warmly, shaking my hand with genuine respect. "You believed in us before we were even a real company. You're part of our success story now." He opened a leather folder and slid it across the polished table toward me. I saw the company's new expansion plans laid out in careful detail, and my name listed among the major partners. I blinked hard, trying to hide my complete shock from showing on my face. "You'll be one of our primary investors moving forward," he continued with a confident smile. "Your early trust made all of this possible for us." I nodded slowly, words stuck somewhere deep in my throat. All I could think about was Marcus's voice echoing in my head. "You don't understand business. It's not your thing." As I left the restaurant that evening, the city air felt different against my skin. Lighter somehow, sharper, full of new possibilities. That night, I lay in bed beside my husband, pretending to scroll through social media as he snored softly next to me. He had absolutely no idea that the company his firm was desperate to impress was partly mine now. Marcus came home one evening bursting with unusual excitement. He poured himself expensive whiskey and started talking faster than normal. "You won't believe it, Liz. The CEO from Horizon Innovations is coming to our annual gala next month. It's a huge deal for the firm. Horizon Innovations. My company now. My investment. My risk that paid off beautifully." I kept my face perfectly neutral, stirring sugar into my tea with careful movements. "That sounds really important for you." He nodded enthusiastically, already planning his networking strategy out loud. "It's massive. If this partnership goes well, it could change absolutely everything for my career." "For us," he said so easily. Like I'd been standing beside him through every victory, every promotion, every closed door he'd shut in my face. I sipped my tea quietly, saying nothing more. "I'm happy for you," I finally whispered. He smiled, completely missing the storm gathering behind my calm eyes and steady voice. When he went to bed early that night, I opened my laptop again. The gala details were already waiting in my inbox, sent directly from Mr. Blake's personal assistant. Same night as Marcus mentioned. Same venue downtown. Same exact time. Marcus's firm was hosting a celebration for the very investors he'd once mocked me for supporting. The days crawled slowly toward the gala like a tiger stalking its prey. Marcus grew more nervous with each passing morning, more controlling about every small detail. "Remember," he said one morning while adjusting his tie in our bedroom mirror, "the company gala is this Friday night. It's executives and board members only. Don't bother trying to come along." He didn't even glance at me while speaking those words that should have hurt, but somehow didn't anymore. I just smiled softly from the doorway. Wouldn't dream of it. That same evening, I called Mr. Blake from my car parked outside our house. "I'll be attending the gala as an investor," I said clearly into the phone. "Of course, Mrs. Hartley," he replied warmly. "We'll have your badge and seating arrangement prepared specially." Friday arrived wrapped in golden evening light and beautiful irony. I dressed slowly in our bedroom. Silk emerald dress. Red lipstick applied with steady hands, heartbeat surprisingly calm. My car pulled up to the grand event hall just as Marcus's familiar laughter echoed from somewhere inside the building. From my position near the entrance, I could see him through the glass doors, confident, careless, surrounded by colleagues hanging on his every word. He had absolutely no idea what was coming. The crystal chandeliers dimmed slightly. Mr. Blake stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mr. Blake's voice filled the elegant ballroom. "Tonight we have the honor of welcoming a very special investor. Someone whose early belief and courage made this entire partnership possible." Every head in the room turned toward the entrance where I stood. The security guard smiled and opened the velvet rope for me. Marcus's champagne glass froze halfway to his lips. His face went completely pale, like he'd seen a ghost walking through his carefully constructed world. "Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Alicia Hartley, one of Horizon's earliest backers and a key reason this partnership exists today." Applause filled the massive room, echoing off the high ceilings. I walked forward slowly, maintaining perfect composure despite my racing heart. I smiled politely at the crowd, letting my eyes scan the room until they finally found him. My husband, standing frozen beside the senior board members. He tried desperately to compose himself, forcing a laugh that never quite reached his shocked eyes. Mr. Blake gestured toward the reserved table at the front of the room, the seat of honor, right beside him and the other major investors. I took my place gracefully while Marcus remained standing where I'd left him, still pretending to casually mingle while his entire world shifted beneath his expensive shoes. For years, I had been the invisible wife, the woman not worth inviting. Champagne glasses clinked softly throughout the ballroom like tiny bells celebrating secrets finally revealed. I could feel Marcus's stare burning into my back from across the crowded room. But he didn't approach me. Not yet. He couldn't, not without losing face in front of everyone watching. Mr. Blake introduced me to other investors and board members, speaking highly of my insight and what he called my quiet wisdom in uncertain markets. I simply nodded, keeping my voice calm and my words carefully chosen. Every compliment felt like music I'd waited years to finally hear played out loud. Then I saw Marcus moving through the crowd toward our table. His smile looked forced, stretched too tight across his face. His eyes kept darting around nervously. "Alicia," he said, trying hard to sound casual and failing. "I had no idea you were involved with Horizon Innovations. This is quite a surprise." I tilted my head slightly, pretending innocent confusion. "You never asked about my investments, Marcus." "Not once in 3 years." He blinked rapidly, completely speechless for maybe the first time since I'd known him. The air between us grew thick and uncomfortable. "Maybe we can talk about this later," I said gently, then turned to greet another investor approaching our table. His heavy silence followed me throughout the entire evening, somehow louder than any applause or congratulations could ever be. Marcus didn't speak during the entire drive home that night. He gripped the leather steering wheel so tightly I could see veins standing out on the back of his hand. The city lights blurred past our windows as we drove through empty streets toward our apartment. Finally, he muttered through clenched teeth. You embarrass me tonight in front of everyone important. I continued looking out the passenger window at the dark buildings rushing past. Did I really? He let out a sharp, frustrated sigh. You should have told me about this investment, Alicia. You should have given me warning. I turned slowly toward him, studying his profile in the dashboard lights. Would you have actually listened if I tried? His mouth opened, then slowly closed again. No words came out, just heavy breathing and wounded pride. He pressed harder on the accelerator instead of answering. The car sped up, headlights slicing through the darkness ahead of us. I felt strangely calm sitting there. Too calm, maybe. Like I'd finally found some kind of peace living right in the middle of chaos. Because somewhere deep down in my heart, I knew something important. This wasn't revenge I was feeling. It was revelation. Pure, simple, honest revelation. And revelations always burn so much brighter and longer than anger ever could. The next morning arrived cold and gray. Marcus moved around our kitchen quieter than usual, making coffee without his normal confident energy. He avoided making eye contact with me completely. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, he asked, "How much money did you actually invest in that company?" I smiled faintly while buttering my toast. Enough to believe in something real when nobody else would. He scoffed loudly, shaking his head. You just got incredibly lucky, that's all. Right place, right time. Nothing more. Maybe I did get lucky. Or maybe luck was just another name people use for courage they didn't possess themselves. He left for work 20 minutes early without finishing his coffee. The apartment felt peaceful after the door closed behind him. Later that afternoon, another email arrived from Mr. Blake. Details about a new investors meeting scheduled for next month. The location made me smile. Marcus's company headquarters downtown. The beautiful irony nearly made me laugh out loud in our empty kitchen. My husband had spent months carefully preparing presentations to impress my business partners. He just didn't know yet that I was one of them, sitting right across from him every morning at breakfast. The universe had a truly wonderful sense of timing and poetry. The meeting fell on a Wednesday morning. The conference room was all sleek glass walls and expensive leather chairs reflecting corporate power. Marcus walked in greeting executives with his usual practice charm and firm handshakes. Then his eyes found me, seated near the front of the room beside Mr. Blake. His confident stride faltered noticeably. He recovered quickly, though, pretending like nothing was wrong or surprising. Mr. Blake stood and began his presentation. Our new partnership with Hartley and Associates will rely heavily on investor insight and guidance. Mrs. Hartley will personally oversee part of the advisory decisions moving forward. I watched Marcus's reflection in the glass wall. Confusion, fear, and wounded pride all tangled together into heavy silence. After the long meeting finally ended, he cornered me quietly in the hallway. His voice came out low and tight. What exactly are you trying to prove here, Alicia? I looked straight into his eyes without blinking. That I was never beneath you, Marcus. You just never bothered looking close enough to actually see me standing there. His jaw tightened, but no response came. I walked away slowly, leaving him standing alone in the glass reflection of his own shattered ego. My heels clicked steadily down the marble hallway. Each step felt lighter than the last. Days drifted past like slow rolling thunder in the distance. Marcus avoided mentioning the Wednesday meeting, but the silence between us at home grew sharper than any argument ever could. He started coming home late, smelling of whiskey and workplace tension. His shoulders stayed constantly hunched like he was carrying invisible weight. At dinner one evening, he finally broke the silence. People at the firm are talking about us. They think you somehow outsmarted me. I set down my fork gently against my plate. Did I outsmart you, Marcus? He stared at me for a long moment, searching my face for guilt that simply wasn't there anymore. You make me look so small, he muttered quietly. I almost laughed at the irony, but held it back. I didn't have to make you look small. You managed that completely on your own. He pushed back from the table abruptly, chair scraping loudly against our hardwood floor. He left the room muttering something I couldn't quite hear. I finished my meal alone at our dining table, not feeling bitter exactly, just quietly certain that something fundamental between us had shifted forever. The apartment felt different now, colder somehow, like two strangers sharing space, but living in completely separate worlds. Outside our window, the city continued its endless rhythm, indifferent to the quiet collapse happening inside our walls. I started spending more time at the Horizon Innovations office downtown. At first, it was just for scheduled meetings and investor updates. But gradually I realized something important. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about finally finding my voice again after years of keeping it carefully hidden and quiet. Mr. Blake admired my business insight, often asking for my opinion before making final decisions on major contracts. For the first time in many years, I felt genuinely respected for what I could build and create, not just for what I could silently endure. One afternoon, I passed Marcus in the building lobby. He was clutching a thick stack of documents like they were a shield protecting him. He froze when he saw me, clearly not expecting to run into me there. "Morning," I said calmly, steadily. "Morning," he replied stiffly. He didn't notice the small badge clipped to my navy blazer, Investor Board Representative, printed in silver letters. I walked past him toward the elevators, feeling his confused stare following me across the marble floor. The world was finally shifting back into its proper shape. And this time, I was standing firmly at the center instead of watching from the shadows. Sometimes justice doesn't announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes it just quietly walks through the front door wearing a blazer. That weekend, Marcus tried making peace between us. He brought home expensive flowers, cooked dinner himself for the first time in months, poured wine he normally never drank. "You've been so distant lately," he said across our candlelit table. "Maybe we should start over fresh. Forget everything that happened." I looked at him carefully. This man who once made me question my own worth and intelligence. "I didn't change, Marcus," I said softly but firmly. "I just finally stopped making myself smaller to fit into your limited vision of who I should be." He smiled faintly, but something flickered behind his eyes. He didn't like what he was seeing in me now. The careful balance of our marriage had tilted completely, and somewhere deep down, he absolutely knew it. Later that night, I caught him staring at my laptop lying open on the coffee table, investor documents clearly visible on the screen. The next morning, I changed all my passwords. Trust, once broken into pieces, never quite grows back in the same shape or strength. We moved around each other like polite strangers sharing an apartment. Words became fewer. Silence grew heavier. I knew something was ending between us, not loudly or dramatically, but quietly, like watching a candle slowly burn down to nothing. Rumors started swirling through the company offices, quiet whispers about an upcoming leadership shift at Horizon Innovations. Mr. Blake was planning to step down from daily operations. A new investor would oversee the major expansion into international markets. Marcus wanted a promotion desperately. He worked late every single night, called endless meetings, rehearsed presentations in our bathroom mirror. But destiny always seems to have a cruel sense of humor about these things. When the final decision was announced in the main conference room, Mr. Blake stood before everyone with a confident smile. "Our new overseeing investor and advisory board chair will be Mrs. Alicia Hartley." The entire room fell into shocked silence. Marcus froze completely, his rehearsed smile dying on his face. I stood slowly, calm and graceful despite my pounding heart. "It's truly an honor," I said clearly. In that single moment, I saw it flash across his eyes, the complete collapse of a man who finally realized the foundation he'd been standing on all along had my name written underneath it. The applause that followed felt distant, like it was happening in another room entirely. I wasn't thinking about the crowd or cameras. I was thinking about how silence, when you endure it long enough, eventually transforms into strategy. That night, Marcus didn't come home at all. I didn't stay up waiting for him or send worried text messages. Instead, I made chamomile tea, opened my leather journal, and wrote carefully. He once believed success was louder than respect. Tonight, he finally learned that silence can be so much stronger. My phone buzzed softly on the kitchen counter. A message from Mr. Blake glowing in the darkness. "Truly proud of how you handled yourself today. You've earned every single bit of this opportunity." I smiled, not because of the praise exactly, but because for the first time in 5 long years, I felt like the woman my father had raised me to be. Calm, steady, quietly unstoppable. Outside our apartment window, rain began tapping softly against the glass. It sounded almost like gentle applause echoing through the empty streets. I finished my tea slowly, watching the city lights blur and shimmer through the wet window. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably sitting in his car or at some bar, trying to understand how everything had shifted so completely. But I wasn't thinking about him anymore. I was thinking about tomorrow's meeting, next month's expansion plans, the future I was building with my own hands. The woman in the window's reflection looked different now. Stronger, clearer, finally visible. The office atmosphere changed dramatically over the following weeks. Marcus's former subordinates started avoiding direct eye contact with him in the hallways. Whispers followed him through corridors that used to echo with his confident voice and loud laughter. He used to command every room with natural arrogance and charm. Now, conversations paused awkwardly whenever I entered. During team meetings, he stumbled through presentations while I sat quietly beside the senior board members. When he occasionally glanced toward me hoping for support or validation, I offered none. Not out of cruelty, but from calm detachment. It felt strange watching him slowly shrink inside the very walls he once ruled like a kingdom. And I realized something important. Revenge doesn't always roar loudly. Sometimes it whispers. The employees who once feared Marcus's temper now worked with visible relief. They came to me with gratitude in their eyes, subtle smiles, loyalty born from genuine respect. Meanwhile, Marcus was quietly transferred to a smaller department to help restructure operations and improve efficiency. He took it as a demotion. It absolutely was. That evening, I found him sitting alone in our dark living room, staring at nothing. "Did you do this to me?" he asked without turning around. I met his eyes in the dim light. "No, Marcus, you did this to yourself." Our apartment grew colder with each passing day. The warmth we'd once shared had evaporated completely, leaving only empty space and heavy silence. Marcus started sleeping in the guest bedroom, making late-night phone calls I pretended not to hear through the thin walls. At work, he began clashing with the new management team, refusing orders, rewriting their directives, questioning every decision publicly. Pride can't bear to kneel, even when the ground is actively slipping away beneath it. One evening, he burst through our front door absolutely furious. "They're replacing me with people half my age. Interns are giving me orders now." I stir my tea slowly, not looking up. "Then, maybe it's finally time you learn to listen instead of just talking." He slammed his briefcase down hard and left again, door shaking in its frame. I didn't chase after him or call his phone. I was completely done saving men who mistook my years of silence for permanent weakness. The apartment settled back into quiet. I could hear traffic humming outside, the refrigerator's gentle buzz, my own steady breathing. For the first time, being alone didn't feel lonely. It felt like freedom finally arriving after a very long journey. Weeks blended together. The company continued growing stronger under new leadership. Marcus, however, faded steadily like old paint peeling off walls. He started missing important deadlines, arriving late to morning meetings, drinking during lunch breaks when he thought nobody noticed. The board definitely noticed everything. When the HR director quietly requested my input on his performance, I didn't speak against him directly. I didn't need to anymore. His own actions and choices spoke far louder than any words I could offer. That particular evening, I watched him through our kitchen window. He sat in his parked car for hours, engine off, shoulders slumped forward. Pity tugged at my heart for a brief moment. But pity fades quickly when you remember the bitter taste of your own humiliation. I turned off the porch light and went upstairs to bed. Sleep came easily now. No more lying awake wondering what I'd done wrong or how I could fix things. The next morning, official letters started arriving. Corporate restructuring notices, performance review requests, the machinery of consequences finally turning. Marcus opened each envelope with shaking hands, his face growing paler with every page. I watched from the doorway, coffee mug warm between my palms, feeling absolutely nothing. Then came the final meeting that changed everything. Horizon Innovations was merging with a major international firm from Singapore. The restructuring required significant layoffs across multiple departments. Marcus's name appeared on the list. The HR director looked genuinely nervous as she handed me the confidential file. Should we inform him personally, Mrs. Hartley? I paused, considering the question carefully. No. Let the system deliver it through normal channels. It's cleaner and more professional that way. When Marcus's official termination letter arrived by courier, he stormed directly into my office, eyes blazing with fury and disbelief. You let this happen to me, he shouted. I met his anger with perfect calm, not even flinching. No, Marcus, you made this happen through your own choices and behavior. His mouth opened to argue, but no words actually came out. Some truths are simply too heavy to argue against. He stood there breathing hard, looking lost and small in his expensive suit. Finally, he turned and walked out of my office. The door closed softly behind him, not with a slam, but with quiet resignation. That sound of gentle closing felt more final than any argument we'd ever had. Our house felt completely empty, even though Marcus was still technically living there. He wandered from room to room like a ghost, searching for something he'd already lost forever. Power, respect, maybe even me, all gone. I spend most evenings in my home office now, reviewing documents, approving new partnerships, planning expansion strategies. It felt strange finally using the freedom I'd always possessed, but never dared to claim. Sometimes I caught my reflection in the dark window glass, no longer the quiet wife who waited patiently for permission to be seen or heard. I was visible now, even when silent, powerful even when still. And visibility, I was learning, was its own particular kind of revenge. Marcus barely spoke to me anymore. When we passed in hallways, he looked through me like I'd become invisible. The irony wasn't lost on me. He'd spent years making me feel invisible. Now I'd become the thing he couldn't bear to see. One morning, I found divorce papers on the kitchen counter. He'd left them there without explanation or conversation. I picked them up slowly, reading through the legal language. No surprise, no sadness, just quiet acceptance. This was always how it would end. The company continued thriving under the new international partnership. My name was mentioned respectfully in board meetings and industry publications. People whispered about me in office corridors now, not with gossip, but with genuine respect. Even the Singapore CEO began consulting me directly on major decisions. Your insights saved us significantly, Alicia, he said during one video conference. I only nodded politely. He didn't know it wasn't really insight guiding me. It was survival skills learned through years of forced silence. Marcus tried appealing his termination through official channels. He came to my office one final time, carrying a folder stuffed with documents. I deserve another chance here, he said quietly. I looked up slowly from my desk. You already had your chance, Marcus. The day you banned me from your world. He stood there for a long moment, then left without another word. It was the quietest apology I'd ever received. The heaviest silence he'd ever given me. That evening, I signed the divorce papers without hesitation. My signature looked strong and clear on the legal documents. No tears, no regrets, just my name written in permanent ink, finally claiming my own life back. The divorce finalized quickly since Marcus didn't contest anything. Maybe he knew deep down it was over long before the signatures dried. I kept our apartment not out of spite or pride, but as proof that I could exist within my own walls without erasing myself anymore. The day Marcus came to collect his remaining belongings, he paused by the front door with boxes in his arms. Was it worth it? He asked, looking genuinely confused. I met his gaze steadily, no longer afraid of his judgment. Every silent night I endured while you dismissed me says yes. He nodded once slowly and left. The echo of that door closing was the softest, sweetest kind of freedom I'd ever known. I stood in the empty apartment, listening to silence that felt completely different now. Not lonely or sad, just peaceful. I walked through each room slowly, reclaiming the space as entirely mine. My coffee mug on the counter, my books on the shelves, my life, finally. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Car horns, distant sirens, the hum of millions of lives intersecting. But inside these walls, everything had finally gone quiet in the best possible way. Months passed like chapters in a book I was writing myself. I stood at the company's annual gala, surrounded by people who actually saw me. This time, nobody banned me from attending. My name was printed clearly on the event banners, etched on crystal awards, whispered with respect throughout the elegant ballroom. The lights shimmered off champagne glasses. The same ballroom where Marcus once refused to take me now opened its polished floor specifically for me. A business journalist approached, microphone ready. "Mrs. Hartley, how did your incredible success story begin?" I smiled faintly, thinking back. With a party I wasn't invited to. The cameras flashed brightly, but I wasn't really thinking about them or the publicity. I was thinking about how silence, when you endure it long enough, eventually becomes strategy. How invisible women learn to see everything. Mr. Blake raised his glass toward me from across the room. I raised mine back, a quiet acknowledgement between partners. The CEO from Singapore approached, wanting to discuss next quarter's expansion. Other investors gathered around, valuing my opinion. For the first time in my entire life, I wasn't someone's wife or shadow. I was just Alicia, the woman who rebuilt what arrogance tried to break. Now, when I walk through the office halls each morning, people greet me differently. Not as Marcus's wife or someone's accessory, but as the woman who quietly rebuilt her entire life from the foundation up. I sometimes wonder if Marcus ever watches the business news or reads industry publications. If he sees the woman he once silenced standing at the top of what he thought was his world. But I don't linger on that thought for long anymore. Revenge was never actually the goal. Peace was, freedom was, respect was, and peace, finally, permanently wears my name. My office overlooks the entire city now. Glass walls, leather chairs, my own conference table where I make decisions that matter. Sometimes I stand by the window at sunset, watching the sky turn gold and purple over the buildings. I think about the woman I used to be, quiet, small, convinced she didn't understand business. And I smile at the woman I've become, strong, visible, finally understanding that I always had power. I just needed permission from myself to use it. The city lights begin flickering on below, one by one, like stars being born. My phone buzzes. Another meeting request. Another opportunity. Another day of building something that's entirely mine. I take a deep breath and answer it.